Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding the DNA of a literal real estate powerhouse. We're looking at EastGroup Properties and their second quarter 2026 strategy to figure out exactly how they pull off such incredible market dominance. As we'll see, it really comes down to a mix of highly targeted geography and a fiercely protected industrial niche.
To get a grip on the sheer scale we're talking about right out of the gate, check out this number, 65.8 million. That is the total square footage owned by EastGroup. We're not talking about a couple of scattered warehouses here. This is an absolute empire of concrete, steel, and logistical infrastructure spread across the country. And that includes all their active development projects and value-add acquisitions currently in lease-up or under construction. It's just massive.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're taking a top-down approach, starting with the industrial real estate edge. Then we'll formally meet EastGroup Properties, dive into their high-growth geographic strategy, and finally, unpack their secret weapon, the shallow bay niche.
All right, part one, the industrial real estate edge. Because before we can really analyze the player, we've got to understand the game, right?
Look at these 5 pillars: stability, limited capital requirements, lack of obsolescence, flexibility, and location. They just perfectly illustrate why this specific sector is so rock solid. Think about a 1980s office building for a second. You'd probably have to sink millions into renovations just to get a modern tech tenant to even look at it. But industrial real estate, it basically doesn't suffer from obsolescence. A well-located, flexible space with low capital needs is just as valuable today as it was decades ago. It provides this unmatched bedrock of stability.
Moving on to part 2, meet EastGroup Properties. They're a self-administered equity real estate investment trust, and they've earned their spot in both the S&P Mid-Cap 400 and the Russell 2000 indexes.
When you actually see a premier multi-tenant distribution property out in the wild, the scale just kind of hits you. You can see the massive truck courts and all those docking bays. This isn't just an empty concrete box, guys. It's a highly functional, incredibly flexible distribution space. Basically, it's the physical footprint of their entire business model.
And that model doesn't just happen by accident. It's driven by a laser-focused set of priorities. Their main goal? Maximizing shareholder value. How? By developing, acquiring, and running these multi-tenant urban distribution centers right next to major transportation hubs. They definitely aren't trying to be everything to everyone. Instead, they're executing a strict 4-pronged growth strategy with a really proven track record in these specific high-growth markets.
Which brings us perfectly to part 3, their high-growth geographic strategy. Because in real estate, we all know location is everything. But for these guys, it's literally a science.
As you can see, EastGroup's footprint is heavily concentrated in the Sun Belt. We're talking California to Texas, all the way across to Florida and up to North Carolina. They are actively hunting down high-growth markets. But spreading out across that southern band isn't random at all. It's all about economic cycle diversification. If one local economy takes a breather, another one is probably heating up, which keeps their entire portfolio completely insulated and stable.
Now let's break that portfolio down by state as of Q2 2026. The sheer weight of their top 2 markets is honestly staggering. 60%, more than half of their entire footprint, is locked into just Texas and Florida. Texas takes the crown at 35%, with Florida right behind at 25%, followed by California, Arizona, and North Carolina. They saw exactly where the surging demand was, and they just aggressively planted their flags there. And this completely answers the why behind those locations. They want local economies that are totally outpacing the broader U.S. economy. Check this out. Over a 5-year period from 2020 to 2025, the U.S. average GDP growth was 17.7%. But the weighted average for EastGroup's specific markets? 24.2%. That means their chosen markets have a GDP growth rate 37% higher than the national average. They're literally dropping their real estate right into the path of outsized economic growth. It's a total no-brainer.
All right, let's bring it all home with part 4, the shallow bay niche. We know they love industrial, we know they dominate the Sun Belt, but what exactly are they building on those sites?
Let's translate the corporate speak for a second. Shallow bay industrial basically means spaces primarily between 20,000 and 100,000 square feet. So, well, you know those million-square-foot mega warehouses way out in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, we're not talking about those. These are the highly coveted last-mile e-commerce hubs. They're tucked right into supply-constrained urban neighborhoods. When you click order online and your package shows up a few hours later, it almost certainly passed through a shallow bay facility just a few miles from your front door. They serve location-sensitive customers who absolutely have to be right next to the end consumer.
And if you look at the data, the power of this niche becomes crystal clear. When you put those massive big box warehouses head-to-head with these urban shallow bay hubs, EastGroup shows this huge, highly protective gap in vacancy rates. Why? Because shallow bay properties are so close to the city center that land is practically non-existent. You just can't easily build new supply. That naturally keeps vacancy rates super low, especially compared to the big box guys who can always just sprawl further and further out into empty land.
By intentionally clustering their multi-tenant properties in these highly supply-constrained infill sites, EastGroup builds an unbelievable competitive moat based on location alone. They're delivering exactly what modern last-mile e-commerce demands, right in the areas where it is the absolute hardest to build. It's basically competitive protection engineered directly into the dirt they build on.
So, taking a step back and looking at everything we've unpacked in this explainer today, from the jaw-dropping 65 million square foot scale to the genius macro targeting of those high GDP Sunbelt markets and their total dominance of last-mile hubs, it really leaves us with one massive question. As our expectations for instant e-commerce delivery just keep evolving, is the ultimate real estate play actually hiding right there in the shallow bay? Thanks for joining me for this deep dive, and definitely keep an eye on how these urban networks keep shaping the world right under our noses.